Howdy, y'all. Welcome back to the den of DBZ All-Star. DBZ All-Star, or Steve, if you prefer, or the artist currently known as Steve. Happy Batman Day 2025. It is September 20th, 2025, and however DC Comics decided to designate a specific day each year as Batman Day, the world may never know. But that doesn't matter. What does matter is today is indeed Batman Day. And we need to celebrate that. So I've already put out a couple shorts. I am going to put out a series of videos. Yes, a series of videos today. Obviously not all at once, that highlight some of the greatest Batman stories. So since a lot of people within the world of collectors are collected edition collectors, we are going to start off with some of the most quintessential Batman stories, at least in my opinion, out there in different collected edition form, though primarily omnibus collected edition form, because full disclosure, many of my Batman trade paperback style collected editions are in storage. I know, the travesty. But we will have some things in this video outside of Omni form for those of you who prefer other formats. Very few, but not to worry, there will be at least a couple, and one of those selections is what I consider to be, for better or for worse, the top quintessential Batman story. The one that, whether you've read Batman before or you're looking for a safe entry point that really drives home who Batman is as a character and focuses on several supporting characters, be it allies or enemies, yeah, it's going to have that, alongside stellar artwork from one of the industry's still top artists. So with that being said, I will also state that this is not a ranked list. This is more about just celebrating Batman as a character and highlighting why these specific eras or runs are so important to the character. To kind of ease us in to this list, we'll start off with something that pays homage to the legacy of Batman the Animated Series. As you may or may not be aware, hopefully if you're in the Batman fandom, you are aware, there was a highly regarded, still to this day, animated series known as Batman the Animated Series. Started off on Fox, eventually, due to some changes, transitioned over to what became Kids WB, created by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. It also had a comic book companion known as the Batman Adventures. So we're going to start off there. So we have two omnis that collect a huge chunk of the animated Batman universe, but in comic book form. So we have from 2023, the Batman Adventures Omnibus, with stories by Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, and the severely underrated Kelly Puckett. Several of the stories, as I mentioned in the short I've posted already, that featured my Batman voice, they act as sequels, sometimes prequels, to already established stories that were established through episodes in the animated series. It also collects an adaptation of a highly beloved Batman animated feature. And if that wasn't enough, the adventures continue in this omnibus right here. This is the Batman and Robin Adventures Omnibus. And that kind of fulfills the, not necessarily obligation, but we'll say the tie-in obligation to the new Batman Adventures, or the Adventures of Batman and Robin, that the animated series eventually transitioned into. This also features some original stories, some tie-ins to episodes from that show and another adaptation. Overall, if you're just looking for fun, casual Batman stories and you love the animated series, I mean, who doesn't? These two Omnis are a great way to celebrate it. They also have some of these stories collected in trade paperback form. Some are out of print, but some are slowly making their way back out into the market. Thank you to James Gunn for having an influence on DC Comics and kicking their butts in gear in the collected edition world. So that would be that. Where to go next? Well, we'll continue with a common creator. I've created a short for this as well, but this is the Batman by Paul Dini omnibus, which has had 2 printings at this point. Paul Dini, as I mentioned, was one of the creators behind Batman the Animated Series, and he's also written comics. Many of those Batman-related comics are reprinted in this omnibus from his run on Detective Comics primarily, but man, I can go on about the stellar artwork and writing in this book. He treated several of the stories like he did the animated series, that the stories can be episodic, one and done. There are some 2-parters in here featuring stories about Batman solo, about Robin, about my all-time favorite DC character, Zatanna, and he's able to craft a sequel to one of the other Batman stories that I'll be talking about that outdoes that original story. It features Batman and Catwoman, and Catwoman's literal heart being at the center and being the main stake in the story. I cannot speak enough about how wonderful this run is. Again, this is one of those runs that if you're just looking to do a one and done entry into the world of Batman, if you want to get to the core of the character, the Batman by Paul Dini omnibus is a great way to do that. Running alongside the Paul Dini run, which was part of the 1 year later Aftermath initiative for the DC event known as Infinite Crisis, which is read Infinite Crisis if you want something that is a love letter to DC. Running alongside that, we had the Batman by Grant Morrison run, collected in 3 omnis, currently being collected in thicker trade paperbacks. Grant Morrison is an artiste by definition. They have this uncanny ability to, kind of like Al Ewing and a few other creators, weave in the important pieces of previous canon, build upon that, even though it could be decades in the past, and make them relevant again. One of the stories right off the bat that he makes relevant is from the 80s, Batman, Son of the Demon. And utilizing that, he is able to introduce a brand new character into the mythos. And they're still relevant today. Won't spoil who that is. You can probably guess who that is if you're a Batman fan. This collects the blank of Batman and several other stories, including Batman and Blank, Batman Incorporated, and these omnis also weave the canon of the post-Crisis on Infinite Earth and the New 52, which is post-Flashpoint, where many of the stories were meant to be, how do I put this, meant to be changed so that they could fit into a 5-year time span. Yeah, it just doesn't work. Unfortunately for Batman and for Green Lantern fans, that was pretty much ignored outside of the requirement to fit everything within 5 years. But wonderful artwork by Chris Burnham in here. Andy Kubert. There is a really fun prose story in Batman 663, I believe it is, featuring Batman and the Joker. This pushes Batman to his limits and brings him back, as well as takes Bruce Wayne off the table for a little while in an interesting fashion, and forges a path forward for another character to stand in as Batman. Definitely one of those quintessential runs, but it does provoke some thinking, because Grant Morrison is one of those creators that seems to want you to think, especially if you've read their Animal Man or their Doom Patrol. So, setting that back down, if you enjoy stories where a character is forced into a situation they've never dealt with, and they have to take that time to really figure out what the best resolution is without sacrificing who they are, look no further. Yes, I still need Volume 2. Then Batman No Man's Land. Gotham had been rocked by a contagion by the events of Nightfall years prior, and in this case they are rocked literally by an earthquake, which causes the US government to separate Gotham, both metaphorically and literally, from the rest of the United States. Batman has to figure out the best strategy to heal Gotham and bring it back into the fold. This features a lot of division of Gotham amongst various villains. It pushes Batman to his limits in a different fashion, and new heroes are able to emerge amongst all of this tragedy. So it's collected in 3 omnis. I still need Volume 2. You have The Road to No Man's Land, you have No Man's Land Volume 1, and there's a No Man's Land Volume 2, which I desperately need to purchase at some point. Great artwork. It was a long story, lots of crossover material, so if that's not your thing, skip it. If not, if you're willing to sit in and just absorb the story, as well as see the comic book introduction of Harley Quinn, that is in here. Feel free to check it out. It is available in 3 omnis, and I believe it was originally printed in 5 trade paperback editions. It was eventually reprinted in thicker trade paperback editions, but if you want the full story, the omnis seem to be still the best route to go. Now, I mentioned Flashpoint just a few moments ago. Well, what would a Batman ranking be, or rather a Batman video talking about great runs be, without Batman by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, collected in 2 thick omni editions, set during the New 52, leaving out Scott Snyder's run on Detective Comics from the pre-New 52 canon. This really showcases what happens when Batman strays from the title of the world's greatest detective, when evil, when something unknown seeps into Gotham without Batman having an inkling that what rumors he has heard are real. That is how this story starts, with the Court of Owls transitioning eventually to death of the family, where the Joker returns after a long time away from Gotham and seeks to make Batman stronger, and does this in a way that could potentially tear the Bat family apart. We take a beat to have Batman mourn a loss that actually takes place in Batman Incorporated, and Batman forges ahead to yet another confrontation with the Joker that takes him completely off the board and helps redefine what makes a Batman for Gotham City. When Bruce Wayne is no longer available, who steps up, if not a member of the Bat family, to fill that role and defend Gotham and her people? A lot of people have said that Super Heavy and Bloom, the final two arcs of Greg Capullo's run with Scott Snyder before the epilogue, are not as strong, and I can kind of see that, but Capullo's artwork shines all throughout the run when he is on board. Yes, there are some fill-in artists, but it doesn't have a negative effect on the title at all. But I feel that those arcs really drive home why Bruce Wayne is essential to the role of Batman, just like Batman is essential to the role for Bruce Wayne. And again, these are collected in 2 Omni editions. There are Absolute editions and trade paperbacks out there as well. A wonderful, wonderful run. Pulling out of canon completely for the Prime Universe, we have Batman White Knight by Sean Gordon Murphy. Writing duty, art duty, same gentleman that constructed Punk Rock Jesus, which is absolutely stellar. This deals with Batman in an alternate continuity, fighting against a Joker who has all of a sudden gone sane again. Well, when your main arch rival is no longer a problem, how do you proceed? And do you instill trust in that person? Do you wind up becoming a more illegal vigilante in your quest to prove that the Joker is still a threat to everyone in Gotham? Or do you finally put to rest a decades-old grudge? Wonderful artwork, interesting story that spun off into a sequel, Curse of the White Knight, Beyond the White Knight, Batman White Knight presents Harley Quinn, Batman White Knight presents Generation Joker, and I believe there is more given the setup at the end of Batman Beyond the White Knight. We'll see. Only Sean Gordon Murphy and DC know, but I'm looking forward to it. Big fan of, at the very least, this initial miniseries. Moving on. Pre-Grant Morrison, pre-Infinite Crisis, to a certain extent, we have the one, the only Batman under the Red Hood. And this focuses on the return/resurrection of one of the older Batman characters. Deals with the fallout from the Batman Hush story arc, deals with the fallout from a decades prior Batman story, and sets up a specific character for future story arcs. Really well done with the emotional beats, with some of the action. Love Batman Annual 25, which is collected in here. This is the Batman Under the Red Hood Deluxe Edition. Collects not only the original story, but some of the aftermath, as well as Red Hood, The Lost Days, which kind of fills in the gap between the return and what transpires in the main Red Hood story. Don't really want to give it away if you haven't read it, but Judd Winnick is a great writer. Doug Mahnke features with their incredible artwork in here as well. There is an animated feature featuring Jensen Ackles of Supernatural also out there that I highly recommend you watch, because it is a wonderful adaptation of this story. Yeah, if you read Hush and want some follow-up on a particular plot point, this is where I would recommend you go next. Speaking of Hush, I mentioned there is what I believe to be the top quintessential story, and this is the compact edition of the Batman Hush story, which, holy cow, it's over 20 years old at this point. This features many of Batman's cast of characters, both supporting and what was I saying? Supporting allies and antagonists, from the Joker to the Riddler to Clayface and so many more. Nightwing features in here, Catwoman, all written by Jeff Loeb, featuring wonderful artwork by Jim Lee. It sets Batman on a course to resolve a mystery of exactly who is Hush. And I recommend, no matter what thoughts and feelings are, that this be read prior to the Heart of Hush storyline that is contained within the Paul Dini omnibus. This is quintessential because this really showcases who Batman is as a person and as a vigilante, and shows why he can't be just a crime fighter, why he needs to live up to that role as the world's greatest detective. Next, we have from James Tiny Onion Tinian IV, Batman, The Rise and Fall of the Batman Omnibus, collecting his entire Detective Comics run. This was a relaunch, post-Flashpoint, as part of the DC Rebirth era, incoming, and it features Batman showcasing that he cannot be a lone answer to the ins and outs of Gotham. He assembles members of the Bat family, some older, some newer and unexpected, such as Clayface, and they plan to keep Gotham safe and improve the crime rate. Unfortunately, things don't always go according to plan, and early on, an ally is lost. However, you must push on. The mission is one of the top priorities in Batman's life. Features Batwoman, who is a great and complicated character, and showcases the possible redemption for not one, but two characters. One who was a previous villain, and another who has yet to fully realize and come into their own that they already are more of a hero than they believe themselves to be. Great artwork, one main through line with this story. It has a start, a middle, and a finish that all make sense, and I can't recommend Tinian's character work enough on this story. Available thus far in this Omni. Will we get thicker trades? Who knows? And finishing off this particular list, I know I have another omnibus off to the side, but we're going to focus on what were I to rank this, would be, out of everything I've shown, the most important book if you want to be emotionally invested in Batman. And that is Batman and Robin by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason, the omnibus collecting the New 52 run of Batman and Robin. This features Batman, Bruce Wayne, and the newest Robin forging a path together with a familial relationship. I don't want to spoil it, even though the character is someone who's been around in current canon probably for 20 years at this point. I think we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of the introduction of this character into current canon. Might be a year or two off, but anyway, given this character's background and their desire to get the approval of Batman, they take extreme measures when crime fighting, which leads to some dissent and some concern between the two characters. Tragedy befalls one of the characters in this book, and the other character has to move forward and find a resolution that will help them with their healing process. It all wraps up in a wonderful fashion. There are so many emotional beats throughout here. It shows the 5 stages of grief, I believe, almost perfectly, although in a comic book fashion. Wonderful, wonderful artwork by Patrick Gleason. Stellar drama by Tomasi. this, if I have to recommend anything, it would be this one. The Batman and Robin by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason omnibus. Now, as a bonus for y'all, in this video, you may be thinking, well, there are more recent Batman runs. What about Batman by Tom King? Well, first of all, I don't have the Batman by Tom King omnibus, and I'm currently rereading to see if I can rank it at all. But I do have, following up on James Tynion IV, the Batman by James Tynion IV omnibus volume 1, which follows up Tom King's run, is starting up in the aftermath of yet another tragedy in Batman's life, and he has to forge a path forward somehow. Gotham still needs its protector, after all. This is the first of 2 omnis that will collect the entire run from issue 86 of the Batman 2016 series up through issue 117 of the same series. One of the highlights for me is the beyond beautiful artwork from Jorge Jimenez all throughout this book. I feel like if there is a post-Greg Capullo artist for Batman, it is Jorge Jimenez. The man's line work, shading, oh my goodness, it's why the current just started Matt Fraction run on Batman is featuring Jorge Jimenez as the artist. It's why Chip Zdarsky's run prior to Matt Fraction's run utilized Jimenez. I don't want to delve too in depth because this is a more recent story, but there's a storyline that, of course, because it has to, involves the Joker, features a new supporting cast member, not on Batman's side, but on the Joker's side, delves into the past and retcons some of the canon in interesting ways. Tynion understands character work, and even though parts of this run struggle, mainly in Volume 2, due to Dan Didio's editorial interference and the horror that almost was 5G, overall I think the start of this run is great. But again, if I have to recommend just one, this is a good entry point. I think this is the top book amongst all of these you see before you for a Batman Day recommendation, for a Batman story, simply because it's a story at its core about Batman and an ally needing to forge a relationship that Batman has no experience with. Features lovely, lovely artwork by Patrick Gleason, and is just fantastic in its emotional beats, in its action sequences. There are quite a few surprises here, but I'll let you decide for yourself which of these Batman stories is your favorite. Which are you interested in checking out after watching this video or after doing your own Bat research? Which of these stories will get you excited enough to do the Bat Tootsie? Yeah, didn't expect that, did you? Whatever you choose, just enjoy it. If you didn't enjoy it, there's plenty else out there, from trade paperback collections to compact editions, deluxe oversized hardcovers, standard trade paperbacks, digital through services such as DC Universe Infinite, or you got these thick and fine Omni editions. No matter what you choose, stay healthy, stay safe, stay bat-tastic, keep your shark repellent on hand, because you never know, it could be a shark bat-nado on the horizon. And above all else, be well. Happy Batman Day 2025.